if you aren't clear on your life purpose or how to make significant headway to living it with all the obligations of your current life. I get you. That's a tough one. Out of everybody I've ever met, I'd say I've met about 12, maybe 15 people who knew their life purpose and were dedicated to that track. I think I met another 200 to 500 who had an idea of it, maybe vague, maybe like an inkling, but weren't committed consistently. I think I've met about 1,000 or heard from about 1,000 who, saw their inner greatness or wanted people to see their awesomeness, but they weren't doing anything. In fact, maybe they were self-sabotaging a bit. They didn't feel a sense of self-worth. And I think for the vast majority of people, the idea of a life purpose is exciting, but it feels really far away. And I want to give a little bit of reassurance here for if you're thinking about variety in life. Life purpose does not mean you're dedicated to one thing and only one thing until you leave this body and die, if you actually even do that. What life purpose is the reason you incarnated, and you remembering that. It's just like if you have a big goal for the year, and as part of your year, you schedule your time. And tomorrow from 2 to 4 p.m., you're going to do a certain thing related to that goal. Your purpose in that time is whatever you have scheduled. Of course, unless the scenario changed in a big way. So one perspective, not the only one, like you, a fellow student of all this stuff, but one perspective is life purpose is you incarnated. This is one of many lifetimes, like you have many hours in every day, week, and year. And for this lifetime, there's a certain alignment. There's a certain thing that feels really resonant. It could be cleaning up the oceans. It could be helping with humanity's awakening. It could be writing. It could be raising kids, planting trees, saving stray dogs, helping orphans, helping empower women, helping empower LGBT individuals, any purpose you might find. And the avenue to that purpose could change. And that purpose itself could change. You could have a purpose that's a deep mission, and at some point feel that's no longer resonant. But until that point, your purpose is something that, deep down feels very aligned, that anytime you ask yourself, your inner voice says it, and says the same consistent thing. Different from the chattering thoughts of the day-to-day, judging ego mind. Different from brainstorming, even though brainstorming done well, like with methods from Stanford's D School, can be very effective, incredibly so. But it's something that's always there. And if it's something, hey, thanks for the love. If it's something that you feel deep down scares you, or you can't admit, or you don't want to commit, or you don't want to come out, or, what could happen to you, or it's way too big, okay, at least you're acknowledging those things. Don't escape, don't avoid, just acknowledge. And maybe consider that each one can be achieved. If your purpose is cleaning the oceans, ending world hunger, helping everybody awaken, raising 10 or 2 excellent kids, I tend to think big, as you can tell. I don't know how many people raise 10 kids. I think I've known, 4 or 5 families like that throughout my life. But if you think about, this purpose as a mission, and at some point, this mission needs to be achieved. You don't have to do all the heavy lifting. There's nannies out there. There's for children. There's other companies and entrepreneurs and foundations that can help with ocean cleanup. So really think about the you and where you fit in. And if you've loved Doctor Strange, as I do, Marvel Comics version in Marvel Cinematic Universe in 2016, as the Ancient One said, it's not about you. So as far as this mission as a whole, do you feel that you would feel complete if it happened without you? Or if it happened and you weren't on the cover of the magazine, you weren't on the TV interviews, you weren't the primary one being featured? If so, then you're 100% of selfless service and your ego is in the back seat. Now that's not always common, and it's not bad if it's not common, just a thing to notice. And the reason why I want you to notice this, if you care about finding or succeeding in your life purpose, is the more you care about it being you who does it, the more that can hamstring you. If I have somebody come to me as a student and they want to wake up and they want to learn advanced healing abilities, I've had 2 mentors heal shattered bones in minutes. I've seen in my own body and other people's major injuries heal twice as fast, 3 times, 10 times as fast with the scientific data, the MRIs, the x-rays, the blood tests, all of it. I've heard of rainforests from the Kogi people in the movie Aluna in the country of Colombia, rainforests that were decimated by deforestation for paper towels or whatever. And these Kogi people, these shamans, regrew the forest, helped it regrow in 20 years. And by all general measures, that would have taken 200 years. That's very practical. Are those people famous? No. Do they care if their names are chanted or put on dollar bills? Probably not. So the more you care about that stuff, the more attention will go into your own recognition. Now, there are places where that can be very valuable. For me, for example, I'm giving this workshop. This workshop is going to be added to part of the school that I have where people get it regularly. I'm representing myself, and I'm putting my credibility on the line. I'm saying a lot of things, I'm giving a lot of advice, I'm referencing some awesome stuff, but that is all a matter of personal brand and professional brand. Now, if people take that well, if they see that well, if they see you well, that will help the brand, that will help you in your own personal, economic, everything life, and that will also help the mission. But if I was so obsessed and it was all about me, then those haters that posted a few months ago, and all the criticisms that I get from people who don't get this stuff or don't care about this stuff or think I'm full of crap, I would stop. And there were a few times when I was more into myself, more narcissistic, when my ego was more dominant, where that did happen, where I needed to feel good or special or the affirmation. And even though I got 40 compliments for a certain video, if I had one or two scathing or even negative comments, those hit me so hard because my sense of self-worth is relatively low. And raising it, get the interesting phenomenon of, when you don't need something, you have it. And so there's such a weird paradox. So making practical sense of the spiritual paradox, if how do you have something by surrendering it? Think about neediness in a relationship. That's a really straightforward example. If you or a partner or potential partner is really needy, really, really clingy, texting all the time, wanting you to pay attention, needing you to do certain things certain ways all the time, they get emotional if you don't or if you're not there, they really need you, they fall apart if you're not there, if there's a breakup there, you fall apart completely. And I'm speaking from knowing a couple people who are in these situations in life. This can happen in our 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, not just, when we're starting to date in our teens, if we did. And so if you're needy in a relationship, you're likely going to push other people away. And if you're needy in your career, if the video is all about you, if the book, if the ocean cleanup, if whatever is all about you, then it's a lot easier to get discouraged. So you want to find a healthy balance. If you're a pop star on stage and you want to feel awesome, then yeah, it's all about you when you're on stage. But when you read the reviews, maybe just look for technical stuff. Maybe just look for people in the know. Don't take any, gossip magazine, any gossip columnist and, be hurt by that. So there's the whole continuum of judgment. So if you want to go deeper into life purpose, please reach out to me to talk one-on-one. I want to get through the agenda and then get to Q&A for anything anybody posted. But if you really want to consider what your life purpose is, ask yourself intuitively, what is my purpose? See what comes up and write it down. Do this for 7 days. This is a 30-second exercise, right? And in those 7 days, see if it's consistent. See if it's not consistent, if there's a pattern. And I want you to keep asking yourself that question and writing the answer, even if it's a page or two, until the story is consistent. And I guarantee you that this practice, if you do it, will bring up a lot of stuff to heal, but it will help you get very clear. Say you write 3 pages of ideas and they're not compatible. You want to be a rock star, astronaut, marine diver, ocean healer, messiah, Wall Street billionaire, heart surgeon, levitating yogi with 50 kids, and they're all perfect, right? Not super realistic for most of us. So say you keep writing that list and you get through all those things and all those ambitions and ideas and desires and wants and feelings, at some point, you're going to find a theme. And that theme will help you architect something that can encompass all of the needs. All those things are satisfying. Maybe the 50 kids is a desire for belonging and human connection. Maybe you don't need to raise 50 kids for that, right? Maybe the idea of being an astronaut is exploring the unknown and having an adventure, doing something amazing and hard. Well, there's other options for that in this world. And if being an astronaut isn't the most important thing in your life, no matter what, then you can integrate that component of your purpose as you're figuring it out into the purpose as a whole. So I see we have a few new folks. Please comment if you have any questions, feedback, suggestions, requests, and I'll do my best to include them. So the next item on our list is being warm-hearted and loving and not needy or overly sensitive around those who you perceive are unkind. So I kind of included this in the first point and then the relationships point, but just to tie it into this idea of an energetically sensitive person, or as a certain author put it, the highly sensitive person. So if you think of a bell curve, a lot of things in nature and business in the world are bell curves. And there's people who are the least sensitive people and people who are the most sensitive people. Just a distribution, right? If you're the most sensitive person in the world, you're probably in a highly controlled environment. If you're the least sensitive person in the world, you're probably not that empathic. You probably have no emotional intelligence. You might be in jail. You might be able to withstand torture. You just don't sense things. Maybe you're in a coma, depending on what you would say qualifies. So along that continuum, generally people who are psychic, accurately psychic, don't just say it and wildly guess or do cold reading, people who are legitimately psychic, people who are very empathic, people who are very sensitive, fall into this category of highly sensitive person. And what that means is things can affect you in a more significant way, most likely because you're not fully grounded and fully open, and open enough to allow what's in your system to be released, and grounded enough to know what needs to be done. So I'm highly sensitive, and just to show you how I manage that along with my spiritual practices, I have a wall of supplements. And if something affects me in a certain way, I take on a path of self-improvement, and I take a supplement until that path is fully realized to augment what I'm doing. So I have a genetic deficiency from my last test where I don't produce a certain enzyme that leads to nitrous oxide, which your heart needs to function well. So because of that, I take a supplement for that. That's a basic thing. I lift weights, so I take creatine, I take carnitine, I take alpha-lipoic acid, etc., to balance out my system. And if I didn't take those, my sensitivities, I would notice right away if something were off. Right? And because I notice that, I can nourish myself and slow down or reverse the process of aging, have more energy than I had at 19. I'm more, I'm doing more stuff with fitness. I'm doing more stuff with romance, with friends, with business, with life. Just feeling better overall than, almost half my life ago. not quite, but almost. Birthday Saturday. Yay. So if you think about not being sensitive, like being sensitive but not having it overwhelm you, that's really the key point about being too sensitive. I think it's good to be sensitive and knowing what's going on in somebody's heart, somebody's mind, what's going on in your body, down to the muscle. You have that much awareness. But being overwhelmed is your nervous system just can't handle the capacity, and you freak out, or you get triggered, or you have to disappear, or isolate, or cocoon, or escape, or astral project, or meditate, or video game, or whatever, right? And that isn't a healthy thing to do in the long term. It's great to play, be in flow, be immersed, dive in, take breaks, relax, have downtime. But if you immediately need to tune out, or, for some of us, accept or maintain or feel no control over an addictive pattern of something, casting a wide net in order to, stay grounded, say here, right? So the practical side of that is what's going on in your system. How do you balance that? Supplements, neurofeedback, meditation, breath work, healthy diet, etc. But as far as also not being overly sensitive, they're seeing in the spiritual level how everything has its place. As I mentioned, everything is God, everything is Goddess, everything is the all, everything is you, everything is here for a purpose. If you manifested a person or situation that triggered you, even if it's repetitive, maybe you have something to learn. Maybe you need to open in that way. Maybe, as a very good psychic healer once said, it was really tough for me to hear, but I felt like I had to hear it, so I did, is she said, the relationship you're in isn't serving you, and it might break your heart to end it, but you need to break your heart wide open. And I was so triggered from that. I thought, why would I want to break my heart intentionally? And I knew intuitively, and I learned over time, especially in the aftermath of that relationship and the several attempted breakups beforehand. Now that wouldn't happen. To be like, okay, our time is peacefully ended. But that hurts so much to hear. And eventually, through releasing sadness, through learning to cry, as a man in the West, I didn't learn to cry. There's a lot of stigma against crying. I didn't learn how to release sadness. I know release a lot of it through laughter, but I'm able to cry. I'm able to feel sad. I'm able to allow people to see me sad and vulnerable. All that stuff is tough. But if you can allow yourself to be open, that sadness won't stay in you. That anger won't stay in you. If you have to express and release that anger, do it in a healthy way so you don't blow up or you don't feel like you have to medicate it. So, okay, that was a lot of content. I know it's only been 42 minutes. Just take a breath for a second. I'm just going to take a quick sip of water and realize you can go over this stuff at any time. You don't have to master all of it instantly. You can rewatch this video. I've heard you need to re-encounter content 7 to 10 times to master it. So, don't worry about needing to commit to everything I've shared so far. This is meant to be an encyclopedia that you can unpack later. All right, so that being said, if you're overly sensitive, that can be very useful, because that can mean you can affect yourself energetically and biochemically in subtle ways. So having some cedarwood oil, for example, your olfactory system is directly connected to your limbic system. This is very calming. This is very grounding. There's a lot of other oils like peppermint and lavender and eucalyptus and lemongrass, which I always think is like the smell of Fruit Loops. It smells so good, that affect you in other ways. If you're more sensitive, you can do things like work with crystals. I have this beautiful big Labradorite, and she's very lovely and charged. This is Alpazoo. Kind of changes genders. Right now it's a she. And if you're energetically sensitive, you can tune into and feel crystals, work with their energy, have them in your field, draw that energy into you, and feel nourished. So if you are sensitive, connect with this psychically, through the digital medium or the video you have, and just see what you sense. I'm going to continue with content for those of you who are interested in that, and I'll put this down in just a second. But if you're very sensitive, you can use that to your advantage. If you need a certain type of energy, loving kindness, support, strength, power in your system, actually intuitively, I think I need to keep it up a bit longer, you can call that in, right? If you need a hug because you're having a rough day, you can close your eyes, deeply visualize a hug, call in a spirit guide or a soul, have that deep, rich connection, really feel it. Remember that mirror neurons in your mind are firing and oxytocin and serotonin is being released. Just marinate on that for a good minute, and there's your hug, right? And maybe even just me describing those is something that could activate those in your mind. If you're watching a video or a movie where it's violent and people are fighting and it's intense and people are freaking out and people are anxious and sad and scared, those mirror neurons fire too. So part of the value of the spiritual path in a practical sense, hey, thanks for the thumbs up, part of the spiritual practical value of that is if you can hold the joy, if you can hold the peace, you'll spread that around you. And if there's people or environmental factors that just have so much crap that it hurts you, it overwhelms you, what wins in a fight? The side that doesn't give up, is more persistent, is stronger, uses power over force, has an embodied depth of consistency, right? So you can completely transform the world around you. Sure, you can escape it, you can change it, but you can completely transform it by fully embodying yourself and by fully allowing any stuff in your system to leave. Okay, like the other points, I want to go on that point for a much longer period of time, just to finish it up, being open-hearted and loving. That comes more naturally as a result. If you're loving and open-hearted and somebody rejects you or hurts you, and then it really, really hurts, and you lose being open-hearted because you don't want to be hurt again, as you would know, you would have some work to do. Being fully open-hearted means both ways. Being able to give love, you have to be able to receive love. You have to be able to let go of judgments and issues related to self-worth to prevent that, or self-love in any form. And then anytime something would come in your system that could hurt you, that could take that away from you, to be strong, be bolstered, and be open, as I've said before, so you can stay in that space. And then practice it. I meditate on my heart. I see light evolve and grow. I feed it nourishing chi. I just focus on the organ and the chakra, and I feel really good when I do that. So for you, if you wanted to think about a similar type of practice, nourishing your heart, biochemically with cacao, I use organic cacao powder with no sugar. That way, it's no problem to do like a big heaping, a couple spoons a day with any fitness regimen. It's good fiber too. But even just nourishing your heart, you don't need hugs and love and plants and lovers and wealth and tropical paradise and the world to be healed and people to be nice to you to feel loving and open-hearted. That stuff is great. I wish that for you so much. But like meditation and certain types of enlightenment where you can reach a state of being just through presence, practice, transmission, shifting, that can also happen with love and kindness. And How do you experience more love? Well, be a generator, be a star, right? Be the center of the reality that you're creating. Emit that love, and more love will come back. I run a co-living community in Palo Alto, California. It's called Alexandria, and I've been very grateful and blessed to run this house for 5.5 years. And in the first couple of years, I wasn't doing so well, and I didn't really know how to run the house very well. So the culture wasn't stable, there was a lot of anger, there was mistrust, there's all this negativity. As I healed and learned how to do this job, I started improving the space, adding art, getting nicer furniture, giving meditations, giving workshops, getting to know the people here, really screening even more heavily and going down from accepting 50% of the people who applied to 30% to 20%. Now it's 5. I'll take 1 in every 20 people who want to live here, because I really care about the culture being, loving. So I created a more loving environment. People hug, people meow at each other, some people say I love you. It's not all the way there like a few other co-living communities I've seen, but it's slowly getting there, and it's really nice. And so whatever environment you're in, you can transform that if you want to have it be more loving. You can generate more love, and you can work on the design, the environment, the elements to have more love present. And I love to say it. I was going to say I hate to say it. Part of me hates to say it, but our world doesn't educate us on how to love very well. If you Google how to love or look on Amazon, sure, you'll find books and resources. And, if you avoid the porn, there's a lot of good stuff out there. Yogananda, Marianne Williamson, both who I mentioned earlier. Marianne Williamson has a return to love, and Yogananda's content is just so full of it. It's so rich. Amma, the hugging saint. I have her portrait. The tapestry of Isis is covering it, but I have her portrait up there, and I have her portrait elsewhere in the house. She's so loving. She'll just hug people nonstop for 18 hours, right? So there's a lot of people expressing love in different ways, and all of us also have love languages. Some care about words more, some it's more touch, some it's more gifts. We all have different makeups based on our conditioning, our past, and many other factors. So, work with what comes naturally to you to have more love in your life and around you. It can be in many types and many flavors. All right, the next topic we have, one more thing on love I'm being led to say. Don't be afraid of love. There's a huge shift in our society as our second chakra, as our relational sexual engines are coming more online collectively with more maturity. On the positive end, people are being understood who are, transgender, who are working with different aspects of sexual orientation. I can speak from experience. People who feel that they are a victim in some way. It could be from anything related to the Me Too movement. It could be anything related to topics of race or ethnicity. And learning how to reclaim our power from those things and not overreact, because there can be overreaction in responding to situations, and there can also be a failure to react, a failure to respond, which is why these movements have had to happen. But if you're thinking about expressing your love, in your heart the ways that are appropriate, right? And if that love expression involves romance, involves sexuality, and you're not sure if how you want to express it is appropriate, ask the person who's closest to you. And if you don't have somebody who's closest to you, then get maybe some professional support or do a lot of research. But for most of us, we're afraid to say I love you. We're afraid of eye contact. We're afraid of that vulnerable, sincere, genuine connection. And that fear doesn't help you be loving. It doesn't help you receive love. Making somebody smile, giving a superficial compliment, doing a nice favor, that's kindness. But rich love, nourishing love, unconditional love, loving somebody even after they do something which you might call horrible, that might be a bit of a challenge, but that's what I'm talking about, that whole umbrella of things.